So I thought I'd just pop on here and sort of share what I've been experiencing and thinking about lately in hopes that there might be some of you out there that can also relate to this experience. Why is being alive so expensive now? Can someone please tell me? So just a little background on where I'm at and what I'm experiencing right now. This feeling has been going on for quite a while now, but has been something that's been sort of quite something that's been exacerbated in recent weeks. So, about a month ago, I re signed the lease to this little house that I'm renting. It's an old house. Not everything works particularly well. I've asked for some repairs to get done. Some repairs get done, some repairs don't. But it's in a good location. It's close to work, and I wanted to rent another year in this house, except that the rent went up by $50 a week. $50 a week, and it already went up by $20 a week last year. So it's like in the space of 18 months, my rent's gone up by $70 a week. And it's a privilege that I can even afford it, right? Like that's what makes me feel sick about it. Is it's like I'm struggling with this even though I have a full-time job. I just can't even imagine how it would feel for someone who doesn't. I'm lucky that I even have reliable work, full-time reliable work. I'm so lucky to even have that. So many people don't even have that. And I'm not even living in a capital city, and the rent is still getting to the point where for the foreseeable future, like I just don't see myself being able to afford it if it gets any higher than it is now. And it's just like, yeah, and I don't even have kids and I have a full-time job, let alone anyone who does. I just can't imagine it. So that's been frustrating me, that rent's going up to the point where I may not be able to afford to rent by myself anymore. Another thing that's been happening is at tax time, I was like just looking at all my finances again. And about 2 years ago, I'd sort of calculated, perhaps incorrectly, that I should have my HEX debt paid off by next year. And I was like, oh, finally, I'll actually see more of my pay. I've been working since 2011 was when I graduated my second degree. And I thought finally I'll pay that off. And I went back and had a look, and no, I will not be paying off my HEX debt anytime soon, because since 2 years ago, the indexing. So if you're not familiar with what HEX is, by the way, it's like a payback scheme that we have here in Australia where you pay back your college university fees. We're lucky to even have that, because if it wasn't for HEX, so many of us wouldn't be able to have a university education, right? Like I certainly was not in a position to be able to pay for my university fees. My family was not in any position to be able to pay for my university fees, right? So I'm grateful that we had the HEX scheme. We went into it with the indexing, so that's sort of a tax of sorts. Was at 0.6% just 2 years ago. It's now at 7.1%. That's such a significant hike, to the point where there are people who are graduating with university degrees that the rate that they pay their HEX debt off will be almost equal to the rate that they are being charged. So it's like, how much longer is it going to take us to pay off our HEX debts, particularly those, like, at least I'm towards the tail end of paying my HEX debt off, not nearly as close to the tail end as I thought, but at least I've spent years having that index rate much lower. But it's just, that the possibility of being able to save up for a deposit on a house one day is just so much further away for so many of us, particularly those who are only just getting through their university degrees now. It's only set to look higher. I think it's 7.8 next year. So that's going on. The cost of living is still like so high, like groceries, like, right, like all of us are experiencing the crunch of that right now. I got absolutely smashed with my Medicare fee thing. Like, for those of us, again, this is an Australian thing. If you are, what is it, over the age of 30, you're in your 30s, and you don't have private health insurance, you get charged for Medicare. And that was fine up until the point where now I'm getting charged so much, it would actually be cheaper for me to take out private health insurance. And now that's another thing I've had to pay for and take out. Again, a privilege that I could even afford it. Don't mind my camera moving around. I've got doggos underneath me. So that's happening as well. And then even when I signed, I signed the lease for my more expensive rent. Didn't want to, but then the other problem is, and this is happening in Australia, and I'm sure that this is happening in other countries in the world as well, is it's like you feel like you're kind of forced. Like we've got a housing crisis here in Australia right now, and a rental crisis specifically in Australia right now. And that's exacerbated by the fact that it's so expensive to move, right? So it's like we've got these rents that are just getting increasingly expensive to the point where it's getting really hard to keep on top of it. Because my pay like went slightly up, but it's like it's been completely cancelled out by the huge hike in my rent, right? So it's like any extra money I thought was going to come in to help pay off my debts, because I have debts as well that I'm trying to pay off, beyond just my HEX debt as well. And yeah, I'm not going to be able to put any of that extra money towards savings or towards paying anything off. Anyway, but yeah, it's so expensive to move as well, because almost every rental contract you go into now, they make you sign to say that you will have a bond clean. So you have to have professional cleaners clean the house. The last time I got bond cleaners, I think it cost me nearly $1,000. And then removalists as well. I don't know anyone who has a truck, so I always have to hire removalists to do that, or at least hire a truck to do that. That's a couple of $100 as well, and potentially a back injury. So there's that. And then you've got to have the money, you've just got to have the cash on you to be able to put the bond down on the next place you're renting. Yeah, sure. Hopefully you get your bond back from the place you're currently renting, but you've still got to have the cash up front to move into the next place while you're leaving the place you're currently in, right? Like most of us, we don't have an in-between place we can live in while we wait for that bond to come back. So, I mean, we're talking at least $2,000 to move every time we move. And then you get in this situation where the owners came back and were like, actually, we want to end the lease early and we want you to get out and we want to move back in. So I advocated for myself and I sort of said, okay, I'd be open to doing that if the real estate can find a place of equivalent size and value, like a place that's still got a yard, is dog friendly, and is in the same price range. And that the owners agree to pay for my removalist costs, because like I literally don't have the money to move right now. That's why I signed the lease in the first place, right? And it's just, I looked into the legislation around that, like, can owners like just boot us out? And in Australia right now, in Queensland where I live right now, no, they can't just boot you out. However, there are extenuating circumstances that mean that they kind of can, if they can prove that they are in a financial crisis situation. I think if they need major repairs done to the house, which frankly this house could do with a lot of repairs, like pretty big repairs. So potentially they could. So it's like, so there's all these like things that are floating around me. And then there's this thing where it's like, I'm locked into 12 months, but potentially the owners are not locked into 12-month contracts. So it's like, so at any moment, we've got to be ready to be turfed out. And so the solution to that is, well, get a mortgage. Well, how? Like none of us can save while we're renting. And to be honest, a lot of people I know, like just your average Joes, just your average Joes who don't have a lot of money, people who are owning a home, they're not having a particularly great time either. They're not exactly having a cruisy life either. The other thing that's been going on is there's a lot of like upheaval happening in my workplace right now. So not my immediate team. Like my immediate team are great. They're good people to work for, and I love the work that we do. I'm fortunate that I have a job that I do genuinely love doing. But we work pretty long hours, we work pretty hard, and sort of at that executive level, like it's a bigger business where there's like an executive level, and there's like these, I refer to them as like these shadow people, these people that make all these decisions at the top that none of us have ever met, and they've never really met us. And there's these decisions that are being like, their business is in a financial situation, and so they are cutting people's jobs. Now, my job has been safe so far. My department's been safe so far, and I'm so grateful for that. I really am. But it's still pretty scary and awful watching people lose their jobs around you. People who've worked there for many years and worked incredibly hard, and they're sort of being turfed out. And it's not that I take issue with the cuts, of course. I don't want people losing their jobs, but even if those cuts are absolutely necessary, it's the way that it's been done as well. Like people have sort of been turfed out without really any sort of care. And it's just feeling like a bit of a yucky environment at the moment, and trying to be there for people I know and care about who have been directly affected by this. It's just been sort of awful. So it's sort of just causing a lot of turmoil right now. And I say all of this not to have a whinge. I'm fully aware of the fact that things could be so much worse, and they have been in my life. Like, I've temporarily experienced homelessness before, in my 20s, and so and I know that even that, like, I know that there's people that have experienced even worse than that. Totally understand that. Um, but I also don't want to create content where everything's just sunny and shiny and fantastic and my life's just fabulous all the time, because it's not. I think what this channel is all about, like what I'm trying to do here, is just be as authentic as I can. And so I share my joy as authentically as I can, and I want to share these struggles as authentically as I can as well. But yeah, life's feeling a bit scary right now. It's just feeling a bit scary. And I think what's been a bit upsetting about it all is that, I'm renting by myself, and that is a privilege, as I mentioned. It's also the first time, like, I'm 35 and I've never been able to rent by myself before. The last 2 years I've rented by myself for the first time in my whole life. And that felt so special. And after life's been so difficult, like my teens were so difficult, my 20s were so difficult for so many reasons. I went through a divorce, back in 2020, and, finally starting to pull the pieces of my life together and living independently for the first time. And the threat of that me possibly being all taken away, I was like, I finally, like, scratched together a life that feels quite quite good, like still difficult, but quite good. And it's just, yeah, that awful feeling of feeling like your life's just always been built on sand. I had a really difficult time in growing up, and so life didn't feel very stable back then. It didn't feel stable during my 20s. There was just so much upheaval and change in my 20s. Finally started getting a sense of stability, and yeah, and then sort of realizing maybe that was a bit of an illusion as well. And it's just tough, and I don't want to position myself as a victim in any of it, of course. But yeah, as I said, I just want to be honest about the fact that this feels pretty awful and it feels pretty hard. So where to from here? I wouldn't be me if I didn't also think about or express the reframing that I need to do around this. It's okay to feel really upset about this, and I have been really upset about this, and I am allowing myself to sort of sit with this and be upset and be angry about it. But also, what are we going to do about it? It's okay to be upset, but it's not okay to unpack and live there, right? I need to think about what I'm going to do about this. I'm not a victim of my life. I'm not totally powerless in this. I need to think about what I'm going to do to move forward and dig myself out of this situation. Now, like you, if you're relating to this video, like you, I want things to be different. I want things to change, and I want them to change right now. However, the reality is things can't change exactly right now. I'm in a crap load of debt right now. As I mentioned, I went through a divorce in 2020, and it was very expensive. Getting a divorce is very expensive, which is why I have so much empathy for people who can't go through separation and divorce, because yeah, it's so expensive to do that. So yeah, I went into tens of thousands of dollars of debt to get out of that relationship, and I had to, for my survival, for my well-being. I had to get out of that, and I have no regrets about it. But it means that, yeah, I mean, years later I'm still paying off the debt from lawyers. So yeah, I totally understand why, yeah, it's so hard for people to get out of those relationships. So I'm in debt because of that. I had a medical procedure last year, so I have some debt that I'm paying off relating to that. I have my HEX debt, as I was mentioning before, and I also have a car loan that I'm paying off. And again, the car loan was another necessity. So essentially, and I'm just sharing what I'm getting up to. Because I think for me, it's just, I can't just sit with this. I need to have a plan. It sort of just gives me that sense of hope and that sense of purpose in times that feel pretty difficult. So I have a bit of a plan to pay off those debts a little quicker. I'm happy to share my little plan with you. Once I've got stuck into the plan, maybe in a couple of months, I'll update you about my financial debt paying off plan. I just want to make sure that the plan actually works before I share it, like just being responsible. I don't want to share something and then it actually doesn't work. And I don't want to send anyone down the wrong path. But yeah, I've got a plan about how I'm going to pay those finances off, pay those debts off. And I guess the other reframe I've been having is that this suburban life, this go to work Monday to Friday, work all day, and then live for the weekends. And thank God it's Friday. And just twice a year you get to go somewhere else and have a holiday. Living like not quite paycheck to paycheck anymore. I have lived paycheck to paycheck. I'm not living completely paycheck to paycheck now. Thank God. But I do know what that's like. But yeah, like still feeling like I'm spinning my wheels all the time, like not really getting anywhere. It's like I haven't had my hair colored in like 2 years. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like I have to do all my beauty work myself. Not that you have to do beauty work, but you know what I mean? I have to tint my own brows and do my own lashes. Again, you don't have to do any of that. None of that's actually a necessity, but it's like I've made cuts. You know what I mean? Avoided health insurance for as long as I could. Like, I've been making these cuts, and it's just like, is this life rejecting me, or is it just a redirection? Don't mind my dog bumping the camera. Yeah, is this rejection, or is it redirection? Is it that it's not that I'm a failure and that I'm failing at this suburban life, and it's just maybe this life isn't working for me because it's not for me. Maybe it will be one day, but maybe it's not for me. As I mentioned, like, I went through a divorce in 2020, and I had that cookie cutter perfect life of, like, it was like a brand new house. We built the house in this brand new suburb. It was like absolutely picture perfect white picket fence, had these lovely neighbors who were also the perfect suburban um, people, and had the dream job and the brand new car and the fancy holidays, and for what? I was miserable. So it's like, it's really making me think about things a little differently, and that's why I'm really grateful for the road trips that I've been on recently, because it's potentially shown me that there's a different way to live. I won't say too much more than that, because I'm still sort of thinking about how I'm going to line these ducks up. But yeah, I'm starting to think that there might be some changes happening in 2025. Once I get on top of this debt, I might be moving a little differently in 2026, quite drastically. It might be time. I'm scared. I've been living the same life in the same town since I was 18, so it's been nearly 2 decades I've lived the same life. Maybe it's time for a change. So lock it in your calendar. And I'm more so saying that to myself, of like, this is almost like a time capsule of sorts. That's what's kind of fun about having a YouTube channel, is it's just like a little time capsule of you documenting your own life. But yeah, mark it in your calendar, 13th of September, 2024. We're going to check in with ourselves and see where I'm up to. Did I go ahead with my plan? Like, by this time next year, if I go ahead with my plan, I'll have made a sizable dent in my debt. I have got to be so strategic and disciplined about it. But if I can stick to that plan, we might have a bit of a different life coming up. And I'd love to take you along for the ride for that. But yeah, stay tuned for that. I'll obviously be continuing to create content in the meantime. But yeah, just wanted to sort of share where I'm up to. And I hope this resonates with you as well. And I'd love to hear, like, what are you going to do about it? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like we're in this together. Like, this sucks. This is hard. This feels really hard right now. But there is a way forward. We don't have to accept things the way that they are. There's still an opportunity for us to live our lives. Not that it doesn't align with what everyone else thinks we should be doing, what everyone else's expectations of us are, what society's demands of the roles that we need to be playing. Like, we can decide for ourselves. And it might take some time. We can't just up and leave. Most of us aren't in a position to be able to do that, but we can start thinking a bit more strategically with the resources that we have. I'd love to hear about, where are you up to, and what are some of the moves you might be making moving forward to, yeah, carve out something that feels as true to you as possible. Thanks so much for listening, and I will catch you soon.